Visit afa.net today and discover the resources available for you and your family. And if you would, please take a minute to show your support. That's afa.net.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. ICE responding to a Rhode Island state lawmaker who criticized their deportation effort. Molly Line has more from Boston.
Enrique Sanchez, a progressive Democrat, posted on social media Sunday claiming, quote, Nazi Gestapo ICE thugs kidnapped another, quote, neighbor in Providence. Sanchez accused the ICE, quote, thugs of damaging several cars belonging to residents and condemned ICE for a, quote, act of terror. ICE Boston officials pushed back on Sanchez's narrative, noting that the neighbor taken into custody was a previously deported, known MS-13 gang member facing fentanyl trafficking charges. ICE slammed Sanchez's comments, writing, Mr. Sanchez thinks so little of his community that he refers to ruthless MS-13 as his neighbors.
A new report alleges former President Biden's chief of staff authorized the use of an auto pen for issuing preemptive pardons for officials like former White House health advisor Anthony Fauci. The Biden White House specifically cited concerns that Republicans would target Fauci and other officials for political retaliation. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky calling on the DOJ to launch an investigation into Fauci.
Will they try to backpedal and say Biden was somehow involved? I think that's what they'll try. But an auto pen pardon, preemptive pardon, there's a lot to go on here. The only way we could actually get this into court is hopefully the DOJ would do their job, indict Anthony Fauci for the felony of lying to Congress, and then take it to court.
Congress is set to vote on a slate of legislation aimed at regulating the cryptocurrency industry. Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty offering support for crypto regulation.
The Biden administration did everything they could to wage war on the crypto industry here in America, to shove that sort of innovation offshore. We've taken major steps here with this legislation to bring it back, to create a regulatory framework that actually works here in America.
The thin blue line is migrating to red America. The National Fraternal Order of Police says its members are moving from wounded and maligned departments in blue cities and heading to more welcoming red towns and cities. Steve Jordahl reports.
The last 4 years have been very hard on the men and women in blue. The George Floyd riots gave tacit permission for leftists, Antifa anarchists, and BLM types to violently attack officers. Woke politicians used the police brutality farce to defund their departments, and deadly ambush attacks are increasing. Randy Sutton, author of Rescuing 911, says it's no surprise that law enforcement personnel are leaving for greener, or make that redder, pastures.
We've been seeing this actually for several years. There was the defunding movement. There was aspects of the law enforcement community that were being attacked regularly by the leadership of the cities that they serve.
They're landing in red states like Texas and Florida, which went after the disaffected cops.
Florida was heavily recruiting active duty law enforcement officers to come to Florida, and they were saying, hey, come to where you're respected.
Sutton says the profession has taken such a hit that even those departments are having a hard time filling the slots.
Very difficult to be a police officer, and we've seen a downward decline of not just recruitment, but of retention of law enforcement officers. It is a national crisis.
He says some officers are looking for more rural assignments. Mayberry is a fiction, but it's still in the back of everybody's minds. But they often can't afford the move.
Now, there's also a huge disparity in pay from police department to police department. For instance, in Louisiana, base pay, you're not going to believe this, is $2,200 a month.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
And finally, a nationwide increase in deaths due to cancers linked with obesity. Lisa Brady has more.
This is House Call for Health. A study shows an increase in obesity-related cancer deaths in the U.S. The research looked at more than 30,000 deaths linked to obesity-related cancers from 1999 to 2020. The study found the age-adjusted mortality rate skyrocketing from more than 3.7 million to more than 13.5 million, tripling over 2 decades. The study also found women, older adults, Black people, Native Americans, and people in rural areas were affected most. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says obesity is connected to at least 13 types of cancer, including colon, uterus, liver, and more. For more health news, go to foxnewshealth.com. House Call for Health. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News.
More news online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
In a recent survey of 1,200 left-of-center American adults, 55% responded that assassinating Donald Trump could be justified. We're swimming in shark-infested cultural waters. Some are suffering from Christianophobia. Jesus said, if they persecuted me, they'll also persecute you. Please give today to help AFA keep equipping you and others to stand for Christ. Help us shine His light into our dark culture. Visit afa.net/warrior.
We inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. Appreciate you joining me today. Lots of headlines, as always, to get to. Lots of good stuff over the last few days. I had a fantastic week last week in Delaware. I did not get to, I really enjoyed getting to record a couple of shows at some of these regional academies where we were in these, we did a couple of shows in Florida. I think I did one in Idaho. Can't remember. And Colorado. That was the other one I did. I wanted to do one in Delaware because Delaware is like, it's like a beachhead in the Northeast for us. I mean, this is la-la land, man, liberal la-la land where they pass all kinds of crazy legislation. And here we are in the actual state capital getting to pass good legislation and training the next generation with good, solid, founding fathers, constitutional perspective. And so anyway, it was a unique one. I just my schedule went crazy, and I wanted to record with those students because there were some really impressive young people there. And it was kind of cool to have. I've got one of my graduates that got elected to the West Virginia House of Delegates, so the House in West Virginia, and he got elected at like 20 years old. He's been there now for 3 or 4 years. I guess 3 years. He's in his third year. Has done an incredible job, rated the number one conservative there in the legislature multiple times. Anyway, he came by because the Delaware Patriot Academy was his first experience at doing something like that 7 years ago when he came as a young 15, 16-year-old, and it was there at the Delaware State Capitol. Then he came to our National Leadership Congress and a bunch of other ones, went through our Constitutional Defense course, and is doing a fantastic job as a legislator in West Virginia. And he came and it was really cool to watch. He was coaching the young people in the very academy where he got his start. So I was like I started to say proud papa. I was more like a proud grandpapa, because I was standing back just watching him on the floor coaching the next group that was coming through. And that was just cool. I kind of had the thought, okay, if I get hit by a truck on the way home or my plane crashes on the way home, not being morbid, I'm just saying, you think about these things. If I'm done tomorrow, if the Lord takes me home, then it's okay. There's a whole crop of Patriot Academy grads that's now out there doing the things we trained them to do, and they're already training the next group coming along. So either, if I have a plane crash or, hey, I take a really long vacation. How about that? What if I just get a really, really long vacation? Then we know that the next generation is okay. They're taken care of because we got this other group coming up. And kind of the same thing happened last night. We were doing our what do we call it? Our Rebuild Liberty course, our national, that's what I was looking for, our National Rebuild Liberty course, which is an online opportunity for people to join in and take this new Constitution class that we just created called Rebuilding Liberty. And we were doing that last night. And when we went to the Q&A, Tim Barton was our special guest, and we went to the Q&A right after. And one of the gals that's here for our Patriot Institute, our one-year program, or in this case, they're doing a taste of it. They're getting to do 1 month, all of July. And this young lady from Oklahoma, 18-year-old named Zoe, she was there in the legislative hall at our here on campus, and we had Q&A going from the legislative hall with one of our coaches, Tony Shoup. And so Tony introduces Zoe. Zoe gets on. She's 18 years old, and she's talking. She's got this great question that's just really, really good for Tim Barton, and the chat just blew up with everybody going, wow, that's what Patriot Academy is all about, training these 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and she was so impressive, and everybody was excited about it. So it was kind of the same thing. I was watching that happen and going, okay, this is so cool to see this next group coming up. And I start with that today to say I wish I had been able to bring you a recording from Delaware and that incredible Leadership Congress that we just had, because we had an amazing 3 days with these young people there at the Capitol. But I can at least report on it for you and tell you it was incredible. And full house. I think we had close to 50 students this time there in Delaware, which is about the most we can pack into their house chamber. And just so encouraging, man. I came home just going, I love hearing these young people talk about the major issues of the day and address them from a solid biblical perspective, a solid constitutional perspective, a solid historical perspective. It's just super, super encouraging, and I wanted to share that with you. So just know help is on the way, even from the Northeast. I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that to say we've got solid biblical worldview families all over this country, in every state, in every community. And a lot of times they feel like they're behind enemy lines. And honestly, sometimes those kids, not sometimes, most of the time, the kids coming out of those communities end up being the best leaders for us because they've been refined by fire. They've had to defend their beliefs all throughout their life. And so then they get 20, 21, 22 years old. They get something like Patriot Academy and American Family and all these organizations coming alongside them, and, man, they're ready to hit the front lines. They're ready to go fight the good fight of faith. So I'm just thankful for that. And finally got home. I was stuck in the airport for 2 days. Well, I wasn't in the airport. I went and got a hotel room. I just gave up. I've learned after 5 million miles, after the third delay on a flight, typically that flight's going to end up getting canceled. I mean, just it's the odds. And with the way it's been the last 6 months, the first delay, I'm already looking at hotel rooms or looking at other airlines or whatever it takes to try to get home. And I got stuck for 2 days, could not get home. So I'm glad to be home. Finally made it home last night. Sitting in my regular studio here in the tavern, and just thankful to be able to be at home and on the campus for a while. So it's good to. I was just telling Bobby, our producer, I'm home for 5 weeks. I don't think I've had 5 weeks in the same spot. Maybe since I started speaking for David Barton at Wall Builders 25 years ago. This may be the first time I've got a 5-week run to be able to broadcast from my studio here on the campus, to be able to be in the chamber at the Legislative Hall here on the campus, and I'm excited about that. Now, that also means I'm going to get to do a lot more with the students that are here for the month for our Patriot Institute. I'll get to spend more time with them. In fact, I'll be teaching them here as soon as I get off the air. I'm going to jump in the truck, drive up to the Legislative Hall, and do a workshop with them, and then I'll be able to do Flashpoint Live from my studio here tonight. But then get to spend some time the rest of this week out there helping with the flood victims and getting to do some of the not rebuilding yet. We're actually just still cleaning up, and still the search goes on. There's still over 100 people missing, and that's gonna take some time. And so anyway, get to be that's part of what's been painful about being gone for the last week is I really wanted to be out there doing more of the search and recovery. And haven't been able to do that. So looking forward to helping my neighbors in the next few days. We're blessed. We've got here at the campus where we live, if you're familiar with Texas at all, if you just think San Antonio, go about 50 minutes west of San Antonio, and that's where we are in a little town called Comfort. And it's we're right between Comfort and Fredericksburg. So we're kind of more we're closer to Fredericksburg, but our address is Comfort. And Comfort is actually where, we're 10 minutes from the Guadalupe River, where a lot of the damage happened, a lot of the bodies were found. It's literally 10 minutes from our gate here at Patriot Academy. Now, fortunately, we're mostly high ground where we are, and so we took a lot of rain, even again this weekend, man. It's just right here where it was so hard hit. More flooding this weekend, but our particular place, we took a lot of rain, but we've got pretty good drainage figured out on our campus. We've only been here about 2.5 years, but we've had some big, heavy rains over the last 2.5 years, and so we've been able to build in some pretty good drainage controls. And so we took some damage, and it'll take us a little bit of time to fix that and some of our roads and whatnot. But for the most part, we're in good shape. The Lord, protect, and we've got over 200 people here at the campus, about 250 people here all throughout the month of July. And so, thankfully, everybody's safe and sound, but also, thankfully, able to lend a hand to the neighbors and deploy teams to go help, while at the same time doing a lot of projects on the campus. We had this month all planned out for doing some major building projects on the campus, and so we're trying to balance that with deploying teams and not being in the way with all the recovery efforts. So a lot going on here, folks, where I am, but I'm glad to be here for the next month. Looking forward to broadcasting and being with you on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and maybe even a little bit in between. Walker and I will try to knock out some programs together this month as well. A couple of things coming up I just want to make sure you're aware of. Our big National Leadership Congress is at the end of the month. This is Patriot Academy's biggest event of the year, so be in prayer. We've got a ton of students coming in from all over the nation that'll spend a week here. We've got about 50 that are here for the Institute, that are here for the whole month of July, and then another 100 or so will be showing up at the end of July for that full week doing the legislative simulation. And then in August, just a couple of weeks later, we'll have our military veterans and Constitution Coach Congress happening. So if you're a military veteran out there and you want to experience the Patriot experience and you want to see what it's like to be a legislator, to be immersed in that experience, that legislative simulation, then go to patriotacademy.com today. We've still got some slots for our military veterans. And if you're already a Constitution coach, there's a chance for you to come as a Constitution coach as well. If you're not a coach, you can sign up today for free at patriotacademy.com and still come to that training in mid-August. And honestly, I don't know how many slots are left, but I know there's a handful. If you would like to be a part of that, patriotacademy.com, and then come join us in mid-August. After our break today, our first break today in segment 2 and 3, we'll definitely go to the phones, 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. A few of the headlines I want to hit before we go to break, if I can get them all in. The pardons that Joe Biden did, the last-minute pardons with the auto pen, now in question. I think that's a really good thing. We actually heard that a little bit on the break there. I am glad to see Rand Paul not letting go of this. So he has re-referred Anthony Fauci to the Department of Justice. And I'm going to mix some headlines here and just tell you, as much as I want to see the Epstein thing prosecuted, there's no doubt about that, needs to be done. I don't think we let up on that. I think we keep pressuring the Department of Justice, and I think we pray for Dan Bongino and Kash Patel to be able to push the right direction on those things. That is not going away. Huge, important. That's kind of been the poster child. I actually, as much as I care about that and I want that to happen, I think Anthony Fauci being prosecuted is 10 times more important than anyone on the Epstein list. Now, I'm not belittling or diminishing the Epstein list. It's important to get that done because it represents the deep state and a lot of the corruption and obviously the child sex trafficking that needs to be handled. No doubt about it. But the number of victims of Anthony Fauci is literally a millionfold of whatever happened at the Epstein Island. Okay, so let's say there was 1,000 girls or kids or whatever a part of that evil at Epstein Island. No question, prosecuting needs to take place there. No question that needs to be followed up on. But if it was even 1,000, then a millionfold is too much. So if you've got 100 million victims of Anthony Fauci, which you've got more than that, there's really billions because his lies impacted the whole world. I mean, the shutdown around the planet was directly related to the lies of Anthony Fauci. So you have millions and billions of people that were either impacted economically. You have millions of people that physically have been harmed and died and now have all kinds of physical ailments from the jab or from COVID itself, which came from the gain-of-function research that Anthony Fauci lied about doing. And so I've said this for the last 4 years. I'm just going to repeat myself as we're going to break here. Anthony Fauci harmed more people and did more damage to America and the world than any other living human being. You could find somebody in history, like a Hitler, that did more damage because of, causing World War II and all of the things that resulted from that. But living today, there's no one. There's no one alive today that caused more death, that caused more economic damage, that caused more lack of faith in our institutions, that did more destruction to the very fabric of America itself than Anthony Fauci. So prosecute Anthony Fauci, absolutely. More important than even the Epstein files, absolutely. It should, the idea that we would let this guy off the hook based on a pardon done with an auto pen that you can't even prove Joe Biden, the president himself, even knew that it took place. And even if it did, the states should be prosecuting Anthony Fauci because that pardon doesn't protect him from that. So I thank Rand Paul for continuing to press this. Okay, quick break. We'll be right back. 888-589-8840 is the phone number. You're listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
How about this? Some actual good news on the healthcare front, even as costs just keep skyrocketing. So if you're 65 or older, MediShare now offers MediShare 65 Plus. Call them. You can talk to them about this. A lot of people are taking advantage of this now because even if you have Medicare Parts A and B, there are out-of-pocket things, deductibles and copays that just keep going up. And the whole point is to help you by giving you a low, consistent monthly payment that fills in the gaps. In fact, I can tell you how much MediShare 65 Plus is. For example, it's $99 a month up to age 75. It keeps costs under control. That helps with peace of mind. MediShare is trusted, too. It's been around for 30 years, and it's a community of people who help each other. Business owners, retirees, pastors, teachers. People love being part of it. Here's the number you can call now. They are easy to talk to. Call 833-45-BIBLE. That's 833-45-BIBLE. 833-45-BIBLE.
Hi, I'm Jan Harper. If you are a pastor's wife, come be encouraged and renewed as you share your challenges and stresses unique to pastors and their wives.
The AFA Pastors and Wives Fishbowl Retreat is coming October 28th through the 30th. You're invited to join us at Pickwick Landing State Park in Counce, Tennessee for 3 days of encouragement, renewal, and worship. Once again, Brother Bert Harper, AFA Director of Family and Pastoral Ministries, will host the retreat along with his wife Jan. Our special speaker will be J.J. Jasper of American Family Radio. If you've attended in the past, we'd love to see you again. And if you've never experienced a fishbowl retreat, we especially invite you to be refreshed and renewed. The per-couple admission price includes lodging, meals, and materials. Visit repairingthefoundations.net to learn more and register. That's repairingthefoundations.net.
The AFA Pastors and Wives Fishbowl Retreat. We'd love to see you there.
Hello, everybody. I'm Walker Wildmon, Vice President here at American Family Association. Well, my brother Wesley and I were following in the footsteps of my dad, our dad, and my grandfather, Don Wildmon, by leading tours to places of the Bible. And so this next March, we're going to be going to Greece and following the footsteps of Paul. So we're so very excited about this trip, and we'll hope you'll join us. Here's a couple of the places that we're going to visit. We're going to visit Philippi, Thessalonica, Corinth, and all the various Greek cities that you read about in the book of Acts and Paul's epistles. And so you can find the dates, locations, pricing, and much more over at wildmangroup.com. You can also find out more about my dad's trip and my mom over to Israel. They're going to be in Israel in March as well. These trips are back-to-back, and you can do both if you would like. All the information about Footsteps of Paul, Greece, Israel, all of these trips in March of 2026, just visit wildmangroup.com.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. Thanks for staying with me today. As we were going to the break, I was just making the point that, I'm convinced that an Anthony Fauci prosecution is more important, even more important, than going after the Epstein files and getting somebody off those lists. There's no question that there should be prosecutions. I mean, if not, then Maxine, whatever, Gazelle, however you say her last name, should be released from prison. I mean, what's she in prison for? If what happened there was criminal behavior, You got to go after the Johns. You can't let all the guys off that Epstein took to the island and whoever else. And so there's got to be some prosecutions. And so I appreciate that Charlie Kirk and Jack Posobiec and all these guys are pushing and pushing and pushing the administration to not let this go. And of course, President Trump had his Truth Social post over the weekend basically saying, all right, enough about Epstein. He's dead. Let's move on. And I don't think that's going to fly. There's no way to let this go. But on the other side of the equation, to the other extreme, for those of you out there that have said, oh, I'm done with Trump, I'm done with MAGA, the deep state wins, there's just no winning, blah, blah, blah. Come on. We got to show some spiritual and emotional maturity here and political maturity. This has been 6 months of the greatest victories, political victories that I've seen in my lifetime. I mean, there is no doubt that this has been the best 6 months for moving the ball down the field and having political victories for the conservative movement of my lifetime. And so you can't have one fumble, as Tim Barton said on our program. You can't have one mistake, and no doubt it was this thing has been fumbled and not handled well and an unforced error. But you can't take that and then throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, oh, I'm done. No, look, it's been 95% victories, okay? Even if nothing becomes of the Epstein thing, if the deep state wins on that one and they're able to cover up whatever it is that they're covering up, bad, horrible, yes, I keep fighting against that, absolutely, but you don't turn around and say the whole thing is for naught, we've lost everything. We've got to have some level of cost-benefit analysis here and looking at the big picture. And frankly, on the Epstein thing, I say give him a little more time. I am not yet willing to say I don't trust the guy in the room anymore. I still trust the guy in the room. First of all, the president, he has earned my trust with all of the victories the last 6 months. Secondly, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. And so the fact that they're throwing a fit, you've got the fight going on with Bondi over this, tells me they're still fighting to make sure the truth comes out eventually. Look, talk to me again in 3 months, 5 months, 6 months. By the end of the year, they've only had – they're less than 6 months at this point. Next Monday will be 6 months. And not even 6 months of them being at FBI. So however many weeks it took to get them approved. So, they've been literally dropped out of a plane, parachuting in like a couple of paratroopers, dropped in behind enemy lines over there and trying to figure out what in the world's going on. And so I would expect some fumbling of the ball because you've also got I don't know if you can say an entire agency, but you've got a lot of entrenched leftists over there fighting them every step of the way. So I'm just saying, give them a little more time. I don't know what the leverage is here. I don't know. I'm not I don't have access to the files. I don't have an inside track to these guys. So I don't know what's actually going on behind the scenes. If I'm guessing, you've definitely got some deep state, intelligence assets on the list, and they don't want to lose leverage over those people, whether that's members of Congress or governors or big money people. I don't know who it is. I'm sure that's what it is. That would be my guess. And they don't want to. So they don't want to lose that power they have over those people by holding them, their feet to the fire to get whatever it is that they're getting out of them. So I think at the end of the day, somebody's going to be the sacrificial lamb. Somebody's going to be the Barabbas, okay? There's going to be a Barabbas offered up off of that Epstein list that's going to get released. We're going to get a partial release, and they're going to throw somebody to the wolves, and or some bodies, right? There'll be some part of the list that gets released. So who will they choose as their Barabbas that they'll offer to the people of America and the world? I don't know. But it's going to happen. There's going to be something. But to my point at the end of the last segment, as important as that is, it pales in comparison to Anthony Fauci being prosecuted. That's the one that, for me, is the linchpin. That's more important in terms of a shot across the bow to the deep state than even anyone on the Epstein list. So we can walk and chew gum. We need to do both, no doubt about it. But I'm just saying, if we're going to get up in arms about one, if we're going to really rant and rave about one, it needs to be the Fauci one. So thank you, Rand Paul, for keeping that front and center and not letting this guy off the hook. He must go to jail. He must be prosecuted for what he did to our country, to our systems, to the world. That one, more than any other, is the most important one to go after. All right, phone number 888-589-8840. One more headline to cover, and then we'll go to your phone calls. 888-589-8840. I'm sorry, two more headlines. ATF slash and burn. Okay, apparently there is an effort, and I think it's in committee today. I don't know if it's been voted out, but there's an effort to trim the sales of the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. I am all for that. I'd be for abolishing it. Get the feds out of this stuff and let the states deal with it. The bill that is apparently going through will defund a lot of their operations. That is a home run, folks. So somebody asked me last night on our Rebuilding Liberty class, one of the questions, actually they were asking Tim Barton, he was our special guest, as I mentioned. The question was, okay, the Supreme Court has essentially green-lighted the president's effort to slash and burn over at Department of Education, get rid of a bunch of these wasteful, useless bureaucrats that do nothing but make education harder for the states and the local school districts. What's next? That was the question. Okay, so if the green light happens, and imagine that, we actually allow the president, the commander-in-chief of not only the military, but the chief executive officer, the man under Article 2 that is authorized to execute the laws. Imagine that we actually let him do his job, that we actually allow these secretaries of these agencies that have been appointed by the President of the United States to go implement the policy that he was elected to do. Imagine if they're actually able to hire and fire people at these agencies. Wow, shocking. Yes, we need to get rid of civil service. The President of the United States should be able to hire and fire everyone in the federal bureaucracy that falls under outside of Congress and the courts. That should be the president's purview. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And this idea that we're going to protect these people is lunacy. And so hopefully, this Supreme Court decision has opened the floodgates. I know it only applies specifically to these Department of Education employees, but I hope that gives President Trump the momentum he needs to just fire at will, all right? And this is, at least match the numbers that Al Gore and Bill Clinton did, all right? They fired hundreds of thousands of federal employees. At least match those numbers. I think it ought to be, double that for sure. Anyway, the question was, who's next? Like, which agency, if you could pick, which agency would be the target for President Trump to slash and burn and trim and shutter at best as best as possible without a congressional act? Who would it be? And funny enough, Tim Barton said ATF. So here we are. Maybe he had already seen this headline, but apparently this bill would do that to the ATF. So I think that's good. And then the last headline, listen, this Chip and Joanna Gaines debacle. Folks, I am so sick and tired of the church being wimpy. I'm sick and tired of church leaders, and that includes ministry leaders, and that includes people given positions of leadership in the media that supposedly represent a biblical worldview. If you're going to represent Christianity, if you're going to claim to be a Christian and then be in the public square, you're going to fail. You're going to fall short. All of us do. I'm wretched, and I fall short. I'm already short, but I also fall short. That's going to happen, okay? But you're supposed to do the best you can, and you're supposed to always have as your standard the Bible and be willing to be corrected by your fellow Christians. So if you take a position and you say, this is my position on the Bible, and you're in the public square, and somebody comes along and says, well, here's why I think you're wrong, you should always be open to being corrected and being convicted and saying, you know what, I got that wrong. I stand corrected, and forgive me, and God forgives me, and I'll move on and do better. So I don't care if you're a radio host like me, if you're a political figure that claims to be a Christian, or you're a media figure like Chip and Joanna Gaines that has, let's just say, benefited from your Christian currency. In other words, you have built up a massive audience, partly because, and I would think even majority because, you represent the Christian faith, and people are glad to see that in the public square, and you do it well. I mean, they did that so well for so long, and they did what they did with their shows and their network really well, and so that was kind of a Colossians 3:23 thing. Here we have some Christians in the public square that are, doing these things in excellence. Well, if you're going to do that, and then you take a position that is anti-biblical, and Christians call you out on that, you got to have some teachability, and you got to be willing to say, maybe I missed it. Maybe I was wrong. And of course they're wrong. Of course, that is not even debatable, really. I mean, that is an obvious violation of biblical values of marriage and sexuality. I don't care if, I mean, let me throw it out there this way, okay? And if you're not familiar with the Chip and Joanna Gaines story, let me tell it in a different way and then we'll come to the facts of what's actually been done. What if, let me give you a hypothetical. What if Chip and Joanna Gaines said, you know what, we're going to have a new show on the network, and it's going to feature this guy that just cannot contain his sexuality within the confines of marriage. He just cannot, and he's really good at remodeling, and he's really good at selling houses or whatever it might be. He's a master at it. Like he really produces good product out there on the market, and people love his remodels, and they love what he does with it, interior decorating and all that. But the challenge with this guy is, we don't want to, leave anybody out. So we got to highlight people of all, backgrounds and lifestyles and everything else. And this guy, he just couldn't, he could not handle limiting his sexuality to one woman. And so he was married, had kids, and decided, you know what, I need to have more than one wife, or I need to have more than one lover. And so, he has a lot of adultery. He commits a lot of adultery, and we just show we want to show in this program that we don't judge anybody. And by not judging anybody, we have to love this guy and actually affirm and confirm and celebrate his adultery. So we're gonna actually have a program where not only is he remodeling these houses, but every time he remodels a house, we're gonna show him with a new girlfriend, and we're gonna show that they're not just going out for ice cream. And it's going to be part of the program because we don't judge and we love everybody. And so let's just have this program where this guy destroys his family and steps out on his wife and sets an example for his kids that, you sleep with anybody that you want. Does anybody think that's okay? Would Chip and Joanna Gaines defend that? Would they say that's okay biblically to put a program like that on their network? How is it any different to do what they've actually done, which is have a homosexual couple on the program with kids? So we have a homosexual. We have two guys that are living in homosexual sin, that are claiming to be married, and have adopted kids. That's my understanding of what this program is. And that's being celebrated, affirmed, shown as normal. It's going to have all the music and the drama. They're going to be shown to be amazing guys, I'm sure. I mean, they're going to be shown to be great dads. They're going to be shown to be great businessmen. They're going to be, you think they're not? I haven't watched it, but I'm sure that's the way that it's going to be projected. How is that any different? From a biblical Christian perspective, that is no different than showing someone living in any other sexual sin. Heterosexual sexual sin is no different than homosexual sexual sin. And so if you're going to say we can't judge, then how is it any different to have a program that's celebrating someone that's living in adultery and someone that's in homosexuality? Folks, it's no different. Biblically, it's no different. And in some ways, it's worse because of what happens in the homosexual lifestyle, because of the destruction of the body, because of what this is going to do for the normalcy that is projected, because of the disgusting and demented view of family that this is going to do for these kids. I do not see how a Christian can celebrate and affirm gay adoption. I don't see how that you can defend that. And now we've got a show on this network and this well-known Christian couple that I have admired, that I've never met them, but I thought they've done a fantastic job, that now they are affirming this, and supposedly their defense to this is don't judge. Are you kidding me? We're not told not to judge. We're told to judge rightly. If you don't judge at all, if you have no judgment and no discernment, then how are you going to raise kids? Okay, hey, go jump off of that building because I don't want to judge you for thinking that you're Superman. Go do other crazy things because I can't judge. that is the weakest defense of sin to say don't judge. We are absolutely supposed to judge. We are absolutely supposed to judge rightly, and we're supposed to have discernment and judgment every day. We're supposed to have discernment and judgment in what we eat, let alone what we do with our sex organs and how we live our lives and what we do with our money and everything else. So terrible defense of a terrible decision. So talk about, I was going to say gains and losses. In this case, absolutely a loss for the Christian faith. And I hope that the correction that is being meted out by other Christian leaders across the country, I hope someone has rapport and relationship with Chip and Joanna Gaines, and that they're willing to listen, and that hopefully this can be corrected in the biblical way. I don't know them. I don't have a relationship with them, but they're public figures with a public life, so this stuff is discussed in the public square in the same way that they are doing it. Anyway, we'll lots of folks on the phone, so we'll take those calls when we come back. 888-589-8840. I'm Rick Green. You're listening to At the Core.
I'll do some stand-up comedy, Abe will do some preaching, and I'm really excited about it. The Weekend with AFA is a chance for our supporters to get better acquainted with the people and ministry you're supporting.
It's a Weekend with AFA, Thursday, October 2nd through Saturday, October 4th in Tupelo, Mississippi. Speakers will include Abraham Hamilton III, Jenna Ellis, Tim Barton, Tim Wildmon, and more. Register at afa.net/weekend. That's afa.net/weekend. When you hear this
is American Family News.
You know what follows is the truth. Your news from a Christian perspective.
Hundreds of teachers are going to have to walk into that school building, and they are forced to swallow political ideology that in many cases violates their very faith and conscience.
If you miss it at the top of the hour, American Family News podcasts are available at afn.net. And sign up for our daily news brief at afn.net.
Without even seeing them show up, I could feel like the darkness.
Jamie Sanchez is another Christian business proprietor who has been targeted for his faith. His Drip Cafe was opened to serve and help the homeless of downtown Denver.
We believe sex outside of marriage and homosexuality is a sin in God's eyes. And the enemy and his minions decided to use that as a platform.
Jesus told us persecution would come.
I would see them, just the rage and the hate. I pictured them doing that at the foot of the cross to Jesus. And I just remembered what he said, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." And so I had to position my heart that way.
The Jamie Sanchez story is one of the videos of the Impact series at stream.afa.net.
It's been a crazy, crazy ride.
See Jamie's story and much more at stream.afa.net.
While in the emergency room with my wife, as she was struggling with the COVID-19 virus herself, and I looked at her, I said, "Are you scared?" And she said, a little bit, but I've been through worse.
The Certainty of Mankind's History with Uncertainty, an article by Peter Rosenberger.
And then, as her fever was approaching almost 103, she started singing "In Christ Alone." I place my trust and find my glory in the power of the cross. And that's how she has anchored herself in the certainty of Christ through her huge medical journey that has included 80 surgeries, both of her legs amputated, 100 doctors have treated her, 12 hospitals, and now the COVID-19 virus. And so when we live with those kinds of uncertainties, anchoring ourselves in Christ alone, that's the only place we can run to where there is certainty.
To read this article and more, visit afa.net/The Stand.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. Thanks for staying with me. And let's finally get to the phones. 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. First up is, Nate in Louisiana. I just lost my software, guys. Can you connect Nate for me? I apologize. It's rebooting. So I lost my call screener software. Nate, go ahead, man.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
My heart gets grieved by injustice, and justice is an attribute of God. And I have came across some Christians that don't believe in the death penalty. And it really bothers me because you have to think of the victim. So, if it was your mom that was killed while out jogging, like what happened to those two children in Tennessee when the guy abducted her and killed her last year, he has to spend the rest of his life knowing that the perpetrator is in an air-conditioned facility eating meals that are prepared for him while his tax dollars pay for it.
Yeah.
That's not justice. If that was my mom, I would go to bed every night thinking about that.
Right.
And there's no closure there. And God is a just God. And biblically, Ecclesiastes 8:11 says, for a lack of a speedy judgment and justice, therefore men's heart is set in them to do wicked. And in Romans, it talks about the whole point of governing power is to execute judgment on the evil. And it says they bear not the sword in vain.
Right.
But weak Christianity, it's like, forgive. Well, forgiveness doesn't mean, if someone steals from you and you're a business owner, you forgive the person, but you don't put them back at the cash register again.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely a lack of common sense even in all of this niceness, which the Bible does not tell us to be nice. There's supposed to be justice and mercy. We're supposed to be kind, and you're spot on. And it begins with this whole debate over whether or not the death penalty is even biblical. I absolutely believe it is. I think the government doesn't bear the sword in vain. I think there's no question that there's certain crimes that are so bad and so evil and so wrong that the death penalty is absolutely justified. And to your point, the alternative, if you ban the death penalty, is that the state ends up spending $30,000, $50,000, $70,000 a year to take care of this person for sometimes 30, 40, 50 years. And, there's no, that's certainly not justice. And then for the victims or the family of the victim, they feel like they don't ever see actual justice take place, that's not justice. You've actually, the incarceration itself becomes in many ways a benefit to the perpetrator instead of a punishment. And so I think you have to start there. That's a whole debate on the death penalty itself. I don't think it's even difficult to support that position from a biblical perspective, and certainly from a cultural and a proper role of the state perspective. Of course, I live in Texas, where the death penalty is definitely still used. I think probably not used enough. But I would give you one example to your point, where people don't want to use it, and it would be here in Texas, the Carla Faye Tucker case, a lady that committed an axe murder, horrible, awful crime, and then became a Christian while in prison, and it was George W. Bush said that it was the toughest decision of his entire career as governor of Texas, and he said, as a Christian, I'm glad that she found the Lord, and I know that she could be a great witness, in prison for the rest of her life if she was to stay alive. But justice is not changed by this, and the law still has to be followed. And so he did not pardon her or commute or any of those things, and she was still put to death under the death penalty, and I think that was the right decision to come to. But it was a difficult one for him, for sure. Anyway, great question. No doubt, justice is distorted in the church today, and there is very little teaching about what justice actually is. That's part of why we do all the Constitution classes that we do from a biblical perspective, so that people understand what does it mean when we say justice. What is due process? What is how does this whole blind justice thing work? You've got to teach those things in the church from a biblical perspective for people to be able to make good policy decisions about what justice would actually then look like at the end of the day. Okay, let's go to Virginia. How about David in Virginia? You're up next. David, phone number for everybody else out there, 888-589-8840. David, go ahead.
I was about the Epstein files. they're definitely dragging their feet. They're fumbling the ball. I know that, back in the day before President Trump was a politician, he rubbed elbows with lots of people. Is it possible that he's on that list? And they're, because that would be just the undoing of so many things if he were on that list. I couldn't imagine to think. God forbid.
Yeah, I think he is. I think he's in the files. I think here's the thing where we have to actually prosecute and investigate and be discerning and be mature enough to see the whole picture. I think he's on there not from going to the island and doing illegal things and horrible things, but probably on the plane. These guys like Epstein that have these jets that they offer rides from here to there for people. I mean, I've flown on planes with where somebody in a church offered, rarely, but once in a while I get to fly on a private plane because I can't get from one event to the other, and so somebody from a church that's a wealthy business owner has a plane and offers it. And when I say rarely, I'm talking like maybe twice a year, 3 times a year, and it's nice. Oh man, is it nice when that happens, because you don't have to deal with TSA and you don't get stuck like I did last weekend for 2 days wasted. Well, not wasted. I actually got a little bit of sleep, a little bit of rest, and got to answer a lot of emails. But my point is, a lot of people end up, on a plane, a private plane with somebody as a result of a business relationship or political or ministry or whatever it might be. And so, I mean, in this case, Epstein, obviously a very evil guy, and I'm sure took advantage of that and offered all kinds of people rides to go places not to his island, but just from New York to Florida or whatever it might be. And so you're going to see a lot of – that's why there has to be somebody actually investigate, not just say somebody's name is in the file. So I think it's already been revealed that I mean, we've seen pictures and video of Trump with Epstein, 30 years ago or whatever. And so, yeah, I think that's part of it, is that that whoever created these files are this, as Trump said in his Truth Social post, are the same people that created all the other dossiers and everything else, often to be used as political weapons. And so, unfortunately, you've got a corrupt agency that's had access to these files for a long time, that chose not to release them when even the left had control of, so actually, if there was anything in there that truthfully harmed Donald Trump, it would have been released in the last 4 years. Absolutely, no question about it. So that's one reason I'm not concerned about Trump in the files, wherever he's connected to Epstein, from the business stuff in New York and all that years ago. I think it's not going to be harming to him, other than by association in any way to have done business with this evil guy. But I think we have to be mature enough to say, goodness, I've spoken at events where people have appeared on the stage later in a program that I did not agree with, and that I thought were either crazy in the church world or crazy in the political world or whatever. Definitely didn't agree with them on things. That doesn't mean that I should be guilty by association with that particular person. And so that's how I would kind of view this thing with Trump and the Epstein files. But other people, that's why I think it's being kept under wraps, is that there are people that are part of those files that did evil things, that are in positions of power, that are being protected, or actually being blackmailed and being bribed and being that's being held over them in order to get whatever political or financial favors out of them. So it's a mix of all of that. And then there are people like Trump that and hey, I could be wrong. Let's say Trump did some really evil things with Epstein 30 or 40 years ago. If that's true, it should come out, and I'm all for that. But I don't think that's the case. But there are other people that also probably are in those files, guilty by association, that did not do these evil sexual things at the island, but took a ride on one of his planes somewhere, and so they are also getting thrown into this mix. So all of that to say, it's a mess. It should come out. There should be truth. There should be. I'm just always for transparency. I just think it's Bill Bennett always said it best. Sunlight's the best disinfectant. So if you want to clean this up, if you want to have some healing and some closure and all of those things, if you want to restore faith in the institutions, you do transparency. You lay it all out there for the American people to sift through. You don't hide any of it. And then as a result, you let experts go in and study it and make judgments and give opinions, and you let the American people have access to it. So that's what I think should be done. We'll see if that actually gets done. Okay, let's head over to Kentucky. Frank in Kentucky. Go ahead, man. You're up next.
Oh, yes. I have a question to ask you about Fauci. I heard on the news that Fauci, Biden gave him a pardon. Can you go to jail with a pardon?
Yeah, so Frank, it's a great question. So there is a pardon. I don't know if Biden gave him the pardon or not. That's what's in question now, because Joe Biden was so out to lunch mentally for those last 3 years of his presidency, but certainly the last 30 days. And so you have this auto pen situation where now everything's being, again, sunlight's the best disinfectant. We're starting to find out that, assistant chief of staff, bureaucrats, basically, people that did not get elected, did not have the power to pardon anybody, and they were the ones giving the green light on these auto pen pardons, meaning that a machine signed that pardon, not Joe Biden, and that we don't know for sure whether or not Joe Biden was even aware or knew anything about the details. Maybe he did. I mean, I know there were comments and interviews, so there's probably a case to be made that he did know about some of these pardons. So short answer to your question is yes, Anthony Fauci received an auto pen pardon. We don't know if the president actually was cognizant or even had the mental faculties to make that decision, and therefore it should be challenged. And that's what Rand Paul's saying. We need to go out. There needs to be an investigation and a prosecution of Anthony Fauci, regardless of that pardon. Let him make the case that he was pardoned, and then let's prove whether or not it was an actual constitutional pardon. And then even if it was a constitutional pardon, even if he wins that argument, that doesn't prevent states from going after him. He harmed people and lied to people, and I think any state attorney general should go after Anthony Fauci and prosecute him for what happened in their state, based on the lies that Anthony Fauci told to the American people, and based on the gain of function research that he did, and then the lies that he made to Congress. And so yes, he was quote unquote pardoned by an auto pen, but I don't think that prevents him. I don't think that gets him off the hook. And it shouldn't, and there should absolutely be prosecutions on this. Okay, let's see. How about Louisiana? Stacy in Louisiana, you're up next. Go ahead, man.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me well?
I hear you great. Go for it.
Okay, good deal. First, I want to thank you for all that you do with Patriot Academy and all that.
You're welcome.
That's awesome stuff. I love hearing these young guys learning and setting up the next generation.
Yes.
And I want to apologize if I jumped the gun calling in while you were answering the guy about
oh no, not
the
at all.
man who asked about Trump being in the files. There's a saying that I learned a long time ago: a guilty pig always squeals. And Trump is the one that brought Epstein up. That ain't squealing. That is bringing to light something that is important. And if he were a guilty party, he would never have brought that up.
That's a great point.
If they had him in the files as doing something wrong, the Democrats or the other side, whoever they may be, because it's not just we got uniparty going on. Whoever would be against him would have already tried to use that, and it's never been brought up by anybody else but him.
Superb
He's listed
point.
as helping. Yeah, he's known as helping Florida when they came to prosecute Epstein. And, as far as him taking a ride on one of his planes, I think Trump's got plenty of planes of his own. I don't think he'd ever rode in.
Yeah. Well, Stacey, you bring up an incredibly good point, and as we're closing out here, let me just emphasize what you're saying, because I forgot about that part, that Trump is actually one of the ones that sounded the alarm and that helped and supported with that Florida prosecution of Epstein. And so, yeah, I mean, that to me is, you're right. That's not the pig squealing, the guilty pig squealing. That's somebody blowing the whistle because they know, maybe they saw something, heard something, maybe they just sensed something. And then when some of the other evidence was presented, whatever the reasons, there absolutely should be credit given to the fact that he supported the prosecutions, and that it doesn't mean somebody's totally innocent, right? Sometimes partners in crime squeal on each other too, but I don't think that's the case here. And again, transparency. Put it all out there, folks, and let's get to the bottom of it. But let's keep it in perspective to the big picture. More political victories in the last 6 months than at any time in my history, and make sure we prosecute Fauci. That's the one that's more important than any of these other potential prosecutions, but let's go after all of them. Thanks for listening today. You've been listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.